I need to sound off for just a minute here about the genetics field. I have a genetic disorder, but really this comes from the stem of my wanting to be a doctor. I wanted to be an ER doc before I got diagnosed with EDS. And so once that changed and I realized I had a genetic disorder and all of the research and crying that comes with it, I was thinking, well, why not go into the genetics field? But the general consensus is not to go into the field of medicine that affects you most personally. So I started thinking about it and I said to myself, well, does genetics affect me that personally? And the obvious answer was, well, of course, you idiot. Genetics takes me off. We use genetics to not only explain our diversity, which is the part of the argument that makes genetics look good, but really we use it so often to rationalize our social prejudices, even before we knew what genetics was. And that bothers me. No other field of medicine that I can think of no other field is so aggressively used as rationale for discrimination than genetics. What we should focus on instead, in my opinion, for whatever that's worth, is how the field can cure people who have genetic disorders. How we can use genetics not only to not to homogenize our society. I don't think that should happen. I really think that genetics could be used to enrich our society by identifying what differences there are that make us the most valuable. That's not an argument for eugenics, because I don't think we should change who we are, but rather learn to recognize and work with what we have. There's all kinds of conflicts of genetics. There's the sex you're born with versus your social gender identity. There's the values or social or physical disability and physical ability. What's more important? There's intellectual ability versus disability. Your skin color, your body type, your eye color, all these things that we use to hurt each other's feelings. We use to think about each other scientifically so that we don't have to see each other as people. And that bothers me a lot. I don't think I could go into that field, but to think objectively, of course, because I do want to be a doctor, it means that I have to acknowledge what genetics does for us. So for me, genetics helped me explain a whole lot of a lifelong problem that I didn't get a diagnosis for until much later in the life cycle. And it's helped me come to terms with that, understand it somewhat objectively, and it's helped me get my head around it. Just having a name, having a classification that I can work within the boundaries of some subset of alternative wellness. I don't know a nice way to say disability, because I don't consider it a disability more than I consider it one of my biggest life challenges and one of my biggest successes to come through it. But when we talk about being transgendered or being intellectually disabled, having the skin color of a minority, all these things keep people below the poverty line. They keep them in differentiated societal roads, avenues that the general populace doesn't travel on. And genetics is just used way too often to make that okay. I think it's time to even the playing field and start using genetics to solve problems. But I know a lot of the stuff we say, well, it's genetic, so there's no cure. Well, there's a way to deal with it. And I think genetic counseling needs a lot more credit, and it needs a lot more presence in the field, because we spend a lot of time looking at how different we are and trying to count all the different ways that we're different, but how to see them as valuable always falls egregiously behind. So that's why I'm not going to go into the field of genetics, because it fires me up like that. And another reason is because you see this little bottom lip or top lip, there's not much of it, that's also genetic. So maybe that's another argument against genetics, and the imperfect skin and the stretchy, but kind of makes me fun. So to say objective, I have to think about the best parts of it, and really it is learning to accept my own strengths, learning to accept my individuality, and also learning to find a way to represent myself in the culture and society that I live in. Because you can't blame society for your genetics. if you want to solve the problems of society, then you have to represent yourself in society. And, you know, the best example that I have of that is Diana, my sister, who is actually right here behind me in this picture. So, not a fan of genetics, but I think it's because of how we use genetics and not because of the field itself. Just a thought. Yeah. Okay, so I forgot why I'd mentioned Diana, and I forgot to elaborate, but really the best reason that she's a great example of crossing genetics with society is because she's transgendered, and of course that causes a societal conflict. But she is every bit as much of a woman as any other woman would identify. The only difference is that she was born male, and so she was born and given socially a male name. But she identifies as Diana. She understands the world as a female, as a woman, and I don't think it matters. I think that's great. Who cares? Who cares about her chromosomes? Why bother? You know, we've come so far in identifying that we don't discriminate against people with Down syndrome who have a third copy of the 21st chromosome. Why bother with the 23rd? Why is one chromosome more important than the other? You know, as someone who lives with constant reminders of my genetics, just like a minority or a disabled person, a female, anything that we use to socially discriminate genetically. It's an appalling way to abuse a medical field. And I think it's time for people to get with the program and stop worrying about genetics. If you want to be in the field of genetics and you're interested in it and you want to participate in the best parts of it, and that is what makes our diversity so valuable. What are the most valuable parts of our diversity? What lets us overcome our problems? But none of this, well, if your chromosomes don't match, then you can't wear a skirt. It's asinine. Just asinine. Hey, just an afterthought. You want to know what's cool about genetics, though? Come here. Look at this adorable little frightened kitty who can't see very well. Is it a kitty? Are you variegated? Are you a product of your genetics? Yes. Is your heart beating so fast? Yes. 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 I'm a product of genetics. I'm a product of genetics. I have asthma, and I can't see very well, but I can hear really well, and I'd rather be anywhere else. Yes, my kitty. Kitty, do you like genetics? Yes. Does your genetics make you adorable? Yes. Okay. Goodbye, kitty. Say bye-bye, kitty. Bye-bye, kitty.